Morning, children. Today I'll teach you Fayol's principles of management. So, before starting the principles, let me tell you about Henry Fayol, the father of management. So, who was he? He was the universalist and the father of general management who was born in France in 1841. He graduated in 1860 as a mining engineer and joined a French mining company the same year. There he worked as a junior executive in the company 1892. Then thereafter he was promoted as a general manager of the company. In 1898 he was appointed as the chief executive of the company. His managerial excellence was reflected by the fact that he turned the losing company into flourishing organization. After his retirement in 1916, he devoted himself for writing principles and practice of management. And his original classic book, Administration Industrially General, was written in French and published in 1916, which was translated into English as General and Industrial Administration in 1929. But it remained unnoticed until it was translated as General and Industrial Management in 1949. So basically, Fayol developed the theory of management. He was of the opinion that managerial excellence is a technical ability and can be acquired. So he developed theories and various principles of management which are universally accepted and make him universalist. He was pioneer of the formal education in management. He met the requirements of modern management. As such, he is rightly accepted as the father of general management. So his long experience and observations in the field of management was reflected in his written work. And he didn't develop any logical theory of management nor involved any philosophy that answered all the questions and satisfied all the doubts about it practically. On the basis of his own experience in the field, he set forth 14 principles. How many? 14 principles of management, and these are below. Okay, so the first principle, as you can see here, is division of work. As the name is only suggesting, division of work means dividing the work. So in his view, the principle division of work should be applied to all the kinds of work, technical as well as management, which means a specialization. That means each job or work should be assigned to the specialist of that particular job, not to anyone. Okay, the one who is a specialist in doing that particular job should be assigned with the right job. And it also promotes efficiency. Fayol suggested that the division of work not only at factory but at all the levels of management as well. For example, if person is skilled in computer programming and that person continues to do that over a period of time, this continuity will specialize him in that particular job and consequently improves his that performance. The aim of the principle is that whole work into small segments is divided to get the specialization. Okay, then the next principle, that is authority and responsibility. What is authority? Both of these things, authority and responsibility, they go together. Okay, it cannot be said that only authority can be performed individually or only responsibility can be performed individually. No, both are performed together or they both go together. Fayol stressed that the right and the power to give orders should be balanced by the responsibility for performing necessary functions. A manager's authority may be official or personal. It is official when it is derived from his position, and it is personal when it arises from his intelligence, moral worth, ability to lead, past services, etc. So to be a good manager, according to him, to be a good manager, both official and personal authority are required, and it is easy to measure the degree of responsibility and the weight of authority at the lower levels. But this becomes progressively difficult as one moves higher. So, in the words of Fayol, the result of authority is responsibility. It is the natural result of, that means it is a natural result of authority and essentially another aspect of authority. And whenever authority is used, responsibility is automatically born. Let's take an example of this. The production manager of a company is manufacturing scooters and asked his foreman to achieve a target of production of 200 scooters per day. A company is manufacturing scooters and asks his foreman to produce how many scooters? 200 scooters per day. But he does not give him the authority to requisition tools and materials from the stores. The foreman was not allowed or was not told that he can use the tools and materials from the stores. The foreman is not able to achieve the target. The production manager cannot blame the foreman because he has not given the authority to requisition tools and material from the stores. That means who's responsible here? The one who was having the authority, the one who has not told him that he can take the tools and the materials from the stores. So there is no balance between authority and responsibility. Then the third one. Third principle is discipline. What is discipline now? It is an essence, obedience, energy, behavior. Okay, all these things can be said as discipline. It is totally immaterial whether this agreement are imposed on the employees or reached upon with their consent. What is important is that such agreement should be obeyed in totality without any dissent. So discipline is absolutely essential for the smooth running of the business. Okay. Example, if the company has entered into an agreement with the employees about their wages for 3 years, then the company should honor it. If they have promised that 3 years they'll be giving the wages, then they should follow it. Similarly, the employees should also honor the commitments made by them. So that is only discipline. Then the next one is unity of command. What is unity of command now? A subordinate should take orders from only one boss. This is only unity of command. The one should take the orders from one boss only. If there will be more superiors or more than one superior, then what will happen? It will undermine the authority, endanger discipline, and disturb order and stability. And awkward situations will also be created. So this will help in achieving the following benefits. Each subordinate will receive the clear-cut orders from one boss. There will not be any harmonious relation between harmonious relation between the superiors and subordinates. Authority responsibility relations will be clear to everybody. Orders and instructions of every executive will be honored. Okay. So example is, if an employee of production department is asked to go slow in production to maintain the quality standard. Example is, if an employee of the production department is asked to go slow in production to manage or to maintain the quality standard by the production in charge, and the sales in charge instructs him to fasten the production to meet the pending orders. In this, what will happen? There won't be unity of command because the one employee is getting the instructions from two. So if he'll get the instructions from single person or the single in charge, then there won't be any sort of confusion. Then next is unity of direction. Unity of direction in single language, it means one head, one plan for a group of activities having the same objectives. One head, one plan. It will create dedication of purpose and loyalty, and it implies that efforts of group are directed towards common goal. For example, the production department should have a single plan and all must work according to that plan to achieve common goals. If somebody is working under a particular department, then firstly they should focus to achieve the objectives of that particular department. If somebody is working in production department, then the employee of that particular department should try to achieve that production department objective before reaching the organizational objective. Okay. Then, so what is the basic difference between unity of command and direction? Unity of command means one employee should receive orders from one superior, whereas unity of direction means one unit, one plan for the group of activities having the same objectives. Then, the sixth principle, subordination of individual interest to general interest. What is subordination of individual to general interest? Individual interest means the interest of an employee, and general interest means interest of the company, that is objective of the organization. So the individuals, yes, they should work for their individual interest, but it should not be like that they are working only for their individual interest only. They should also work for their general interest. Okay. Example, if individual objective is to earn more remuneration, and the organization has the objective of cutting down the expenses because it's going through the situation of financial crisis, in this the individual must sacrifice his interest. He should not focus on getting more remuneration because his company is facing the situation of financial crisis. So he should sacrifice there. Then next is remuneration to employees. You all know remuneration means fair and adequate wages, salaries and everything. Okay. So it should afford the maximum satisfaction to both the types of incentives, financial as well as non-financial. Okay. So determining the wage rate and proper method of wage payment is difficult. It is difficult to decide whether the organization should have time, job or piece rate system, incentive or a method of profit sharing. The organization may think of paying the wages in kind or of introducing non-financial incentives or welfare schemes. Like profits earned by the firm should not entirely go to the shareholders and the managers as commission, but it should be distributed among all the workers also. Then next is centralization and decentralization. So centralization means there should be one central point in the organization which exercise control over all the part. But the degree of centralization of authority should vary according to the needs of situation. Like to what extent a manager can centralize authority in his hands will depend upon his intelligence, experience and quick decision making ability. Example, the major decision and activities of setting goals, plans, policies can be centralized, but there can be a policy of decentralization for the activities of routine work. Okay. For example, the head is the only one who can make the plans, who can take the major decisions, but other day-to-day work can be seen by others also. So that is decentralization. If somebody is focusing on some particular thing, then that is centralization. Others cannot see that, but if others can look after the day-to-day routine work, then that is decentralization. Then ninth principle is scalar chain. So it is it's a chain of supervisors from the highest to lowest rank. At times can be circulated also. Okay. It is all right to say that every communication should follow the prescribed route. This is also what the principle of unity of command also implies. But at the time, adherence to prescribed route may delay matters. Okay, if somebody is following the route, as it is said, scalar chain, we have to follow the route from highest to lowest. But sometimes what happens, somebody, for example, there is a person of the same department. Okay, two person are there of the same department and they want to communicate directly. Then they can directly communicate and that will be called as gangplank. And the main disadvantage of scalar chain is that the communication takes too much time as the order comes from top to bottom. Okay. Then the next one is order. 10th principle is order. Here order means the principle of order implies that it is for both the material as well as man. An organization ought to be based on orderly thought out plan, means whatever they are doing, that should be in a proper order, proper plan. Okay, there can be no foolproof test in this respect. For example, if a worker is in need of a tool, he should know in which box or tool room it will be found. Everything should be in a proper order. Similarly, if employee needs guidance from his superior, he must know where is he sitting. The aim is orderly placement of men and material in the organization. Then 11th one is principle of equity. Kindness and justice should be exercised by management in dealing with their subordinates. This will infuse loyalty and devotion among the employees. For Fayol, equity does not mean a total absence of force or harshness. At times, these might become necessary for the sake of equity itself. But as he sees it, only a manager endowed with a good nature, fair judgment, and enough experience can apply equity. So, example for this, workers performing similar jobs should be paid the same wage rate. No worker should be unduly favored or punished. So, that is equity. All should be treated equally. Then 12th one, stability of tenure or personnel. An employee with the requisite abilities needs some time to gain specialization. If employee is shifted off and on, neither the employee nor the employer would gain anything from it. So, stability is linked with the long tenure of personnel in the organization. For example, there should not be frequent termination and transfer. Okay, if somebody will continuously transferred or terminated from the job, he would not like to work in a particular organization. If the employer will keep on transferring the particular employee from one department to another during a year, then the employee would not feel like working in the organization, because mentally he won't be able to focus on the particular area. Then the 13th principle is principle of initiative. What is initiative? It is power of thinking out a plan and ensuring its successful implementation, which stimulates human endeavor. It adds to one's zeal and energy. To ensure success, plans should be well formulated before they are executed. Initiative on the part of employees can become a great source of strength. Not initiative must not be against the established practice. For example, an employee has a right to give suggestions about any matter of the organization. But once a decision is taken on any issue, then there is no scope for disobedience. The aim of this principle is to encourage employees to give suggestions. And the last and the 14th principle is spirit de corps. It literally means the spirit of loyalty and revolution which unites the members of a group or society. It also means regard for the honor of enterprise to which one belongs. Fayol said that there is a strength in union. The whole organization, that means the whole organization should function as a team, and every member of the team should work to accomplish organizational goals. He emphasized the importance of good communication and achieving teamwork. Okay, so after reading or after explaining you all these principles of Fayol and Taylor, I would like to tell you the difference between the Fayol's and Taylor's principle. What was the basic difference? How can you compare? So, both of them recognized the importance of human factor in management. Both of them focused in human factor. Then the second one, both realized the universality of principles of management. Third, they both have practical approach. Fourth, both aimed at improving the prevailing conditions of the management. Then they suggested division of work, gave importance to organizational interest over individual interest, and applied scientific methods to the problems of management. So these were some of the points which are similar in Fayol's and Taylor's principle. Now if we talk about the differences, what were the differences? Then some of the differences are here. Taylor's contribution was related to shop floor level of factory, whereas Fayol's was for the top level. Then this was the Taylor's contribution. It was applicable to specialized situation, whereas Fayol's principle, it was applicable universally. Then focus. Taylor basically focused on eliminating wasteful movements in the course of saving energy of workers, whereas Fayol focused on development of principles for better management. Then Taylor's techniques are developed as scientific management, whereas Fayol's techniques are developed as general theory of administration. So some people regard Taylor above Fayol, but it's not correct, because Fayol's work is not less than that of Taylor. Okay, because as somebody said, as long as we refer to Frederick W. Taylor as the father of scientific management, we would do justice to Fayol and his work to call him the father of principles of management. So F.W. Taylor, he is called as the father of scientific management, whereas Fayol, he is called as the father of principles of management. So this was the explanation of the second chapter, and here it ends. Thank you.